just when you thought it was safe to go onto iTunes. This is Next Level Guy, the only website that makes self-development as fun as going to the movies. It's time to take the red pill and escape the Matrix.
What's happening, guys? It's time for another episode of the Next Level Guy Show podcast with your favourite tutor, Ian Dawson Mackay. Next Level Guy is a go-to men's interview, interest and improvement website where I quiz the experts to find out the hacks, tips, methods and protocols that you can implement in your own life to take it to the next level and live happier, healthier, wealthier, sexier and so much more. Today's guest is Josh Tyler. Josh is a co-founder of the phenomenal Savage Gentleman website, whose goal is to be a source of inspiration and guidance for the modern male and offer high-quality goods to accommodate both the savage and the gentleman. Josh heads up the business development and creative side. As a professional fighter and outdoorsman, Josh falls more on the savage side, but can still be a gentleman if need be. Although he's much more comfortable applying his craft in the cage than wearing a suit, he still appreciates a nice glass of scotch and the value of a well-kempt beard. In his spare time, you can find Josh training at his local gym, practicing his survival skills in the wild, or simply enjoying some downtime with his wife and kids. In this interview, we discuss his story, Savage Gentleman, the internal conflict going inside every man, masculinity, fatherhood, product development, and how to balance your own savage and gentleman side to succeed in life, among many other things. And now, let's get to the interview. Well, thank you so much, Josh, for doing this. I really appreciate it. You run Savage Gentleman, which is an awesome site. Your podcast has got some amazing guests, but for these guys who maybe don't know who you are, could you just give a quick intro? You know, like imagine you're in a lift and you have to give somebody the 30-second overview.
Sure,
of who you
yeah.
are.
So my name is Josh Tyler. I fancy myself perhaps the world's most okayest MMA fighter. An amateur, I'd say semi-professional adventurer, a novice entrepreneur, a habitual overthinker, and I don't know, man. I'm just a guy, honestly. You know, we live in a world where people are constantly trying to get up on this pedestal, and you know, and in this look at me, and I understand that there's a usefulness to that, but at the same time, you can really very easily run down that rabbit hole and kind of lose touch with actually being a person and enjoying your life because you're trying to craft this, you know, extraordinary thing for the sake of crafting an extraordinary thing. Whereas, I don't know, for me, I want to do fantastic things. I want to do amazing, radical, really badass stuff. But for my own enjoyment, not necessarily to say, hey, cool, look at all this rad stuff that I've done. So, you know, I have done some cool things. You know, I've had a, you know, career as a professional MMA fighter. I've gone out and done some pretty cool survival wilderness things. I was on a television show for that. And man, I get to hang out with a lot of really cool people, which, you know, some might be envious of that as well, but for me, it's just looking for opportunities to push myself, to see what I can do, and if I can't do something, find ways to make myself better. That's a really roundabout way of describing someone, and I don't know. That's a pretty long elevator ride, I suppose, to get all that accomplished.
No, I really, really love that. It's very similar to how I started. I know what you mean about people putting others on pedestals, because when I started, you know, everybody's trying to be the expert, and I was like, that's not me.
Sure.
I'm just a regular guy who wanted to improve.
Yeah.
And that's why I was so chuffed when I seen how you'd set your stuff up, how you'd set your life up. I mean, you live an awesome life, and you're doing so many cool things, but, you know, I love the approach of the you know, that there's, yeah, we're savage or a gentleman. Sorry, that's my pop-ups coming up.
Yep.
But can you tell me a little bit about how you got into this? Like, what made you decide, okay, enough is enough, I want to start getting better. But what made you then create your own podcast?
Yeah, it was an interesting evolution, because I wouldn't really consider myself necessarily an authority on anything in particular, much like what you were saying. I mean, I wouldn't advise anyone to follow me through a buffet line, let alone formulate major life decisions on what I say or what I do, and try to model their lives after mine. However, I do think that I've been fortunate to go through and experience a lot of things, and put them in a perspective that some people may find useful. And so that was kind of the impetus of coming up with this podcast. We were looking at trying to find a way just to really just discuss different ideas, to bring in people that we knew, that we had access to, that maybe had some insight, or perhaps other people might not have access to. And the podcast was, let's talk about what it means to be both a savage and a gentleman simultaneously, and pursue both ends of that spectrum with the ultimate goal of making ourselves into the best version of ourselves as we can. Because and that's the kind of the mantra, right, where for us, you can't just be a savage and you can't just be a gentleman. The pinnacle of who we are is a combination, or the ability to be both, and just to continue to develop that balance and find that balance.
So the concept is that about being a savage and a gentleman. Is that something that we have from birth, or can you define what is, like, a quick overview of what
Sure.
is a savage and what is a gentleman in the terms that you're applying? Would you see a kid having this kind of internal conflict? Is that why some kids are a bit more ruly than
that's a great question. So one of the things that I really like about what we've done is this notion of a savage gentleman isn't relegated to my personal Josh Tyler definition, right? I mean, it's open to interpretation, whereas Ian may define savagery as one thing versus someone else. But I think that we do have some inherent traits, and that varies from person to person. I mean, there are just individuals who are predisposed from birth to different activities or different tendencies, different interests, that sort of thing. You have little guys that from day one want to dig in the dirt and make a mess and that sort of thing, and then you have other kids that are far more cerebral and analytical, or perhaps artistic, and then there's whatever extrinsic outside forces that are going to come into play and direct that. But the idea of savagery is, I think that we all have this natural competitive desire, and I don't care what you say. You could take the most peaceful, nice individual. There's still some competitiveness in that. It just may manifest itself in different ways. So for guys like you and I, that's on the mat, or in some kind of combat sport, which I would contend is probably the purest form of competition, is to fist fight someone else. But someone else, their competition may be a fantasy football league. It may be tennis, or it could be a video game or a board game, or it could just be getting in internet battles with people. I mean, the competitive nature is pretty evident when we see people just arguing to complete strangers online. They're trying to prove their point. They want to win, right? We have this competitive side. I think that is what we can liken to our savage side, this primitive desire to achieve, right? And to push. And, that can be as sophisticated as, growing a business, or it can be as primitive as just trying to survive in the wild. And So I think that's kind of the notion of the savage side, right? Is taking that, crush everything by any means necessary, do what I have to do to get where I need to go, right? And then the gentleman's side, on the other opposite end of the spectrum, is the more placated ideology of, hey, I need to cooperate with other individuals. I need to adhere to some standard and guideline of society, because I understand that if I operate outside of those boundaries, I'm not going to go as far as I could. It kind of borrows a bit from the John Locke natural state, and what he talks about the state of man, or state of nature rather. Mm-hmm. Whereas, we're pretty primitive beings, but then there's that higher level of refinement and cooperation and sophistication that is the gentleman's side, which is where we should probably operate the majority of our time, in society today. However, if you leave that savage side completely dormant and you have no skill or ability to rise to some occasion, be that an emergency, survival, a fist fight, whatever, again, you're not going to be as successful in life.
When you were growing up, did you find you leaned one way or the other? Did you have a lot of male relatives around who kind of produced one way or the other in you, or do we all bounce between the two? Can there ever be somebody that's just one side or the other, or are they always working in conflict with one another?
I mean, I think you absolutely can be one way or the other, but what at least from my personal experience, and from others that I've encountered, what typically happens is, if you live completely in one side or the other, be it savage or gentleman, you go through life and you eventually hit a brick wall where you stop progressing. You can only go so far as an absolute savage or an absolute gentleman. And if you're incapable of tapping into the other side, then you're kind of stymied in that spot. And so for myself as a kid, I kind of bounced between both. I mean, I think my influences were far more on the savage side, just very, very much, hardworking, traditional masculine traits, that sort of thing. And I was actually a bit of the black sheep in the family, where while I did enjoy sports and being outdoors and all these, things, I also very much enjoyed art and music and creativity and all this on the other side, which was kind of foreign. And looking back, I'm sure it probably befuddled my father quite a bit growing up. And he's like, I don't know where this kid came from, and now, I think he's very much proud of the man that I've become, and he'll still scoff at some of my, music selections or, taste in, and even like culinary things. He's like, I can't believe you would be into eating something like that. And it's like, it tastes good. Like, I don't know what to tell you, and so I realized, just in my own, that, man, I don't care just because there's stuff that my dad did and values that I value, but it's okay that we value different things. And I was able to embrace that. One of the things, going back to what I had said before with the kind of the anecdotal of, you can't be one way or the other, or else things start to get a little bit weird. It was the realization in my fighting career that I had spent so much time in the savage, I had forgotten that I had this whole gentleman side about me, that I had been neglecting. Everything was in pursuit of this fighting career, and I completely neglected that I actually like to be creative and make things and do stuff along those lines. And it wasn't until I started actually working for a company and editing videos that kind of scratched that creative itch, and I realized, oh yeah, this is what I was missing, and I felt much more fulfilled at that point.
Because you almost get so railroaded, don't you, into certain areas of like, that's the way the family do it, or the father kind of says to the son,
Yep.
oh no, I don't have any son of mine dancing or this kind of stuff. I think that's a plot for Billy Elliot, from what I remember.
Sure.
But I mean, my dad was very much the kind of, he was there when you needed him kind of thing, but he didn't do any emotional stuff. He was not quite sure. Like, he would phone you or FaceTime you. Well, he still does now, and he'd pass me to my mother. It's like he wants to sit and listen and join in, but to him, his version of it was sort of standoffish. It was very kind of savagery. It was kind of, we did the lifting stuff, we worked sheep and all that kind of stuff, but we wouldn't be able to sit down and discuss things, because he would be a bit kind of, oh no, how do I do this? It's kind of strange that into it is like how we're kind of moved into jobs depending on the kind of characteristics we show, whereas we're not. We don't really get time to really understand who we are as a person before society says, no, you've got to work for the rest of your life.
Yeah, it is kind of unfortunate, and I think that is where a lot of the problems we as men often face is we find ourselves in a place that we really isn't that we're not really suited for, or maybe we were at the time, but the person that we have grown into no longer fits in that box anymore, but now we've invested 10, 15, 20 years into a career that is no longer in fulfilling because we have grown and now our interests and our desires have changed. And I think that can be really unfortunate because we feel stuck, right? It's now, we've become what we do. Who we are is tied into our profession. And this was something that I struggled with myself with fighting, which, by the way, talking about the family business and that sort of thing, like my family business, my dad, my grandfather, my brother, is tied to construction and road building and operating heavy equipment. And growing up doing that, I realized, that's not for me. Like, I don't see myself doing this for the rest of life. There was some enjoyment in it, but I was like, I need to chart a different path. And that path for me was pursuing this fight career, which then I realized at a certain point, hey, I'm not going to be able to do this for the rest of my life. And while I enjoyed every second of it and wouldn't change anything, I realized, hey, I'm going to have to do something different because I won't be able to compete indefinitely. And if you know much about, the fighting profession, unless you're in the upper echelon, there's not a lot of long-term financial stability
more
in that
concessions
profession.
And dollars.
Right? Yeah, absolutely. Let me tell you. So so I realized, like, man, I'm going to have to kind of shift and move. And fortunately, things fell into place in order for me to do that, and that wasn't just pure happenstance. That was obviously my own work and my own creativity to make that happen. But I would be remiss to say if I did it all on my own. I had a lot of circumstances and things fall into place to help me make that transition. I think it's a little bit of both, right? You do have to have some opportunity, but you also have to be poised to take advantage of that. So that's kind of what led me down this path and got me to where now with Savage Gentleman, I'm able to fulfill both sides. I can go out and I can do the savage things I need to. I can train in those and build that up because obviously that fits with the company culture. And then at the same time, I can do gentleman things, and simply running a business on, in of itself is more on that gentleman side. It's an area that I'm still learning and trying to grow in and figure out and try not to make too many grievous mistakes in. But it gives me an opportunity to really tap into either side at will. I can do both. If I feel like I'm going too far in one direction, I can tighten, I can right the ship and go back in the other pretty much from day to day.
I mean, that's why I loved your Instagram when I found it. 1 minute you're talking about survival skills and you were showing you fighting in the cage and you're bloodied up and, I think you were in the middle of throwing a back elbow, and the next photo it was on about a tea party that you're having with your kids. I was like, that's the kind of guy that I love meeting. It's the kind of one who your kids ask for a tea party, they get a tea party, but you don't ever give up who you are because you know who you are, but you can be both extremes and you're completely confident in each of the roles. Can you remember the moment that you really wanted to change? Was there a one event, or was it just a general nagging that you just thought it was the universe telling you, no, you need a change? What kind of motivated you to start this transition to, kind of evolving the gentleman side of you?
It was the probably when I realized we were pregnant with our daughter. So she's our first child. She's 4.5 now, and now we've got a little guy. When I found out I was going to have a little one, all of a sudden the perspective changed a little bit, where it's like fighting isn't super stable. It's not super reliable in terms of a career choice. Man, it's not that incredibly lucrative, and in any moment the whole thing could go up in smoke given an injury or whatever. And so I realized, okay, I need to do something different, and that's what set me on the path to find some other modality of work, to which I came across a company called Ready Man, and they were in conjunction with another company called Black Rifle Coffee that some of the listeners may have heard of as well. They're pretty popular coffee company here stateside. I met up with those guys, saw some of the things that they were doing, and I was like, hey, I don't know what I can contribute, but I'd like to help because you guys are onto something here. And so that led me to editing videos, and it was the satisfaction of making and creating something that clicked the light bulb that, like, oh wow, I have neglected this side of myself for so long that I didn't even realize that it was missing, and now that I can pinpoint that, I can see why I might have been struggling, in the past, and why I was having issues, and kind of down and didn't find ways. It's because I was neglecting, a side of myself, an important side of myself, for, 10 or 12 years that had just gone completely dormant. I think for most men, it's the inverse. They spent so much time in the gentleman, and haven't tapped into their savage side. I mean, the conclusion is the same. The feeling, I think, is the same. Where we have everything we should want. We should be happy. We should be satisfied with our lives because we have, the wife, the kids, the car, the job, all those things, and yet somehow something is missing. For me, it was the creative side, but I think for most men, it's the savage side that they have neglected for whatever reason, and that they need to pursue to fill in that void, whatever that might be.
Well, that was definitely me. I can still remember kind of needing more, so I went and got a job in a big city, and I thought, no, still need more. So I've been doing the blog, wasn't really enjoying it, and then I found I quite enjoyed speaking to people, so I thought, okay, I'll start a podcast. And then eventually, I think that took care of my sort of gentleman side, but then I needed something more, and I eventually started Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and that was a click. I needed something physical, but I needed something mental. It's like, I think I read somewhere about you saying you create your own products, and it helps you scratch your creative itch. You also do that, and that's very much like me, because when I look at your Instagram, listen to you on the podcast, you lead that kind of life that I think me and a lot of guys aspire to be. It's that kind of, you seem to have that perfect balance. Do you think this is where a lot of guys are struggling, is they're so addicted to technology that they've got so out of whack, they're scared to leave their comfort zone and change and transform? Or
I think so. No, I think you're absolutely right with that. I mean, I think, and that's just our inherent human nature, and fear of failure. Very few of us are willing to step out of that comfort zone and attempt something that we may not be amazing at right off the bat. And so that's why I commend anyone that steps into a gym, having no background in the sport, to do something like BJJ or MMA or boxing or judo or wrestling or whatever, something like that, because failure is generally a huge blow to our egos as men, especially something something, as it pertains to fighting, right? We all, whether it's true or not, like to believe we're far more capable at defending ourselves than we probably are, myself included. You know what I mean? Even as a professional and with as much experience, I'm sure there are times where I overinflate my actual ability, which is why it's important to then go and make sure that I've got a realistic view. It's like, okay, if I start, if I haven't been to the gym in a while, I may not have an accurate viewpoint of where I stand. And the good thing about going in and stepping on the mat is you are reminded, you get instant feedback of what you can do and what you can't do, and that's what I love about that. But I think for a lot of men, our egos won't allow us to reveal these. I mean, some people would look at them as weaknesses, but they're not. It's like, it's not a weakness to not be good at something you've never actually put any time into. It's like, man, I can't fault a guy for not being, a Division I wrestler if he wasn't a Division I wrestler. You know what I mean? If he hadn't spent a decade crafting that skill. And so, but we have this expectation that we should just be inherently good at certain things. And I think that prevents us from going out and doing the things. And then I think the second thing is just simply not knowing where to start. For the person who's never spent time outdoors, the prospect of going up and spending a weekend in the woods with nothing but, a knife and the clothes on your back is a terrifying and arguably dangerous proposition, So they're like, well, that's what I want. I'd love to be that super outdoorsy, survival-y guy, but I don't know the first thing. It's like, well, okay, then, that's your destination, but that's not, you don't just jump into the ocean if you don't know how to swim. You gotta get some requisite skills and start off slow. It's the same thing with BJJ. You're not going to show up day one and get thrown into the cage with a elite level UFC fighter, right? They're going to teach you some things. I mean, hopefully not. I mean, if it's a responsible gym owner, they won't do that. And so that's where, with Savage Gentlemen, I mean, that's one of the things that we wanted to be able to do is help guys figure out how to get started. Like, I don't claim to have the solutions to everyone and what they need to do, but what I can do is, at least with my own experience or the experience of the people that I know, at least give some information for people that want to pursue something in that realm, be it Savage or Gentleman, and whatever that may be, whether it's you want to get into motorcycles or whether you want to get into, cooking or art or, fist fighting or whatever that is. It's like, I want to build my circle with guys that are pretty knowledgeable in that field, so that other people can have it, but also just for my own, for my own personal thing, because I want to be able to learn from those guys as well.
100% agree. I was nodding along the whole way because I only feel alive after 2 hours of jiu-jitsu. Mm-hmm. But I feel the same when I've done an amazing podcast or got somebody signed up who is like a dream guest, and it's that kind of moment of it's sad to say, but it's life changing. But you can't force somebody to do jiu-jitsu or MMA or something like that. They've actually got to come along to really understand it, to put themselves to the moment. But it's like you've said, is the ego will not allow people. Most people, most guys will always believe they could get the girl or win a fight, who've never actually been in it. And 2 minutes into a jiu-jitsu class and you've got a girl throwing you around who's like a quarter your size, and you think, okay. I mean, I was big, so I was quite muscular anyway, so I could at least control it to a point, but
sure,
I wasn't using technique, I was using a lot of strength, and you then have to sort of shut off this strength, go into the technique, and it really shows you how much we're dominated by our egos. Like, I really
Yes.
struggled. I looked at every role against somebody as a must-win situation. In a way, I still do. I looked at every time I was not as good as the small guy who could barrel and bull better than me. I was like, okay, I'm not going to look at that, or I'm making an excuse for it. And it really works on your character and develops you in that kind of way. I mean, in one of your awesome blog posts, you mentioned about your development in that kind of skill, where you said you moved away, somewhere new, and it sort of shortened the learning curve.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Is that the first step for guys? Do they have to do something big like that?
Man.
Or where would guys go? How could we start this journey? If you've got somebody listening who's going, yeah, this is me, I really want to do this, but how do they... I hate these kind of phrases like SACAP and that, but because it took me a long time to go for jiu-jitsu.
Yeah. I think so. Here's the way I look at it for me personally, and this will hopefully apply to more be more universally applicable, right? Because I can't say that for everyone jiu-jitsu is the answer, or that moving to a new town and starting fresh is the answer. Mm-hmm. Really, if you distill it all down, the answer is stepping out of that comfort zone and finding a way to challenge yourself. And the only way you can do that is to kind of remove the attachment to
what you define yourself as, maybe?
What you define yourself and the outcome of what it is you're doing, right? And that is the hard part, because, we really much, we think we are what we do. And so, in the case of jiu-jitsu, all of a sudden, like, our value becomes derivative of our performance and how good of if you're a jiu-jitsu guy, you know what I mean? Now all of a sudden there's this expectation. Well, everybody knows me as jiu-jitsu guy, so if I show up, I better be pretty damn good at jiu-jitsu, or else what are people going to think? And the one simple truth that I've realized that's helped me out a lot is that nobody cares. Like, we all think that everyone is thinking and spending all this mental energy thinking about us and what we do and what we look like and how we act. But the reality is we as creatures are far too self-focused to really put that much energy into what anyone else in the world. Listen, there's 7 billion people in the world. Statistically speaking, to that number, nobody even knows that you exist. So to put all this value of, on your performance of like, oh man, I have to do this perfect, or I have to succeed and be awesome at this new thing, or else I don't want to do it. I mean, it's ridiculous, because again, there's billions of people that have no idea what happened and what you did in jiu-jitsu class, or whatever it is that you're trying. You know what I mean? So it's an understanding and the ability to kind of let go of some of those expectations, and not necessarily doing something for the end result. Doing jiu-jitsu because I want to be good at jiu-jitsu, that's a byproduct. I'm doing jiu-jitsu because I want to challenge myself, because I know that's where I'm going to grow. I need to find things that are not inherently easy for me. Now, this isn't what you want to do for your career path necessarily, but in terms of like seeking fulfillment, it's like I need to find things that aren't, that maybe don't come natural, but I have some interest in for whatever reason, but they are challenging and I really have to work for and I have to earn. I think that's what's important. And so for me, the moving away from home, that in and of itself was the challenge, because all my family, everything that I've ever known, has pretty much been in this one small town. The challenge for me was to let go of that, venture out to a completely new and different place, and try and make my way and navigate without all of these, I wouldn't say crutches, but like the safety net. I essentially had to cut the safety net in order for me personally to progress. And I think for some people that, yeah, they absolutely should do that, and that's the right path. For others, that may not be the road, what they need, just like jiu-jitsu might not be the road for them. It may be mountain biking. It may be CrossFit. I mean, it could be any number of physical things. You and I, obviously, we're pretty, we're pretty particular to the grappling arts, but, I can't say that that's right for everyone. But the point of it is challenging yourself.
Yeah, because it's like you said, you just need to do something. It's like in your blog post where you said about, creating a fire. You need that spark. You need that ignition. And whatever you choose, it can create that fire, which, burns that kind of passion in you to go and keep improving, keep evolving. But how do we learn humility? How do we make sure we're not being controlled by the ego? Is it simply a case of, if it's making you feel really uneasy, it's good for you? Because that's something I still see with guys who've been training for 6-7 years more than me. Like, I've only been there for just over a year, and some of these guys it's like they define their masculinity,
Sure.
if they're a good guy or not, by what they can do in a role. And it's like you said,
Yep.
there's 7 billion people on the planet.
Well,
hardly your family care what you've done.
Yeah, I mean, it's like even my wife doesn't care, how well I performed, in a particular training session. You know what I mean? Like, I could come home and say, "Oh, babe, I submitted this guy and that guy and this guy," and she's like, "Oh, that's nice." Or I could come home and say, "Oh man, I got crushed today," and she's like, "Oh, that's too bad." Nobody cares. Like, it doesn't matter. And if you're focused on that, just as a side note to these, gym class warriors or heroes or whatever you want to call them, it's like, if that's the way you're approaching your training, I'll flat out tell you, you're never going to get any better. If you're not, and this kind of applies to life, if you're not willing to open up and make mistakes in training, then and possibly get caught, get submitted by your training partners. If you're not getting tapped in class, if you're not failing at all at anything that you do, you're never going to get beyond where you are right now. You will never progress. There has to be, you have to overreach. You have to make yourself vulnerable. You have to put yourself in bad spots so that you can learn and improve. That's, that's true for jiu-jitsu, and I think that that's in some degree true in life. Granted, we have to guard ourselves a little bit to where it's like, okay, I'm not gonna drain my life savings into this thing, and if it fails, well, now I'm up shit creek without a paddle. We have to use some discretion, but this idea of finding things that make us uneasy or uncomfortable, at least for me, that's kind of been my guidepost. If there's ever been the question of should I do this or should I not do it, I kind of base it on how much do I not want to do it, and if there is this like, oh man, I'm really uncomfortable, I super don't want to do this thing, that's usually when the notion or the nod that I need to say, oh, you absolutely need to do this. I don't want to do it, but that voice that's trying to hold me back, I've learned to recognize that that's the voice I need to, that if I can turn that off and learn to, drown it out or overcome it or whatever, that's usually where good things have happened. And that's a hard thing to do, but I've recognized that, like, it's not self-preservation. That's different. Oh, should I jump into this, body of water swirling with sharks? The voice that's telling you don't do that is self-preservation. Should I step on stage and deliver this speech, in front of these people? The voice that says don't do that, that's self-preservation of our ego. And there's a difference, and we need to learn to recognize the two. Ego's an interesting thing. Jack Donovan and I had a really cool discussion about this while he was in town. Some buddies
podcast, that one.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, he was a lot of fun. Like, great interview, awesome guy. and this is something that I've spoken with some of my other friends and colleagues about ego, and we kind of have created this notion of that ego inherently is bad, and we should kill our ego and destroy and completely remove our ego altogether. And I don't think that that's the right thing either. Someone put it. I like the way someone put it, and I can't remember who to attribute to, so I apologize. But they said, it's okay to have your ego in the car, or to bring your ego with you. Just keep it in the trunk. Which is to say, don't let your ego in the driver's seat or maybe in the passenger seat. But if you had no ego whatsoever, you would never try anything. The ego is what's there that gives us the belief that we can do something more than what we're currently doing. If there was no ego, there would be no athletics, there would be no world records being set. People wouldn't start a business because they wouldn't have the audacity to even believe they could succeed. And so it's like, well, if we know we're going to fail, we definitely won't try. So you have to have that ego in there, in so much that you believe in yourself to try things, but you can't give it the wheel either. It's, again, finding that balance. So that's one of those subjects that I think we kind of misconstrue, and with most things we like to put it in a nice little cookie cutter idea of ego. We like to have these little catchphrases: kill your ego, and then that's as far as we explore that idea for most of us, because it's simple, it's easy to swallow, and unfortunately that's kind of the world that we live in today, right? But it's, I would encourage people to think a little bit more deeply on some of these very seemingly simple ideologies that we like to just kick around.
I love that, because it's I get that when I interview a lot of people is, yeah, just go do it. And you're thinking, well, that's easy for a guy who's really confident, who's, like making millions and all this kind of stuff. It's difficult for a guy who's sitting, who's really not sure how to, they want more from life, but they're not even sure how to start. Their mates would take a mick. The family are going, don't be so silly, that's not you, you're not you're not good enough. And I always say to people is, it doesn't matter, there's a verbal tap, there's a kind of a universal tap out for everything. Like we can tap out in a combat role, but you can tap out, you can learn the guitar and tap out and oh no, I don't want to go on stage, or you can make a muck-up, and then no one will remember in about a week's time. It'll be on to something else.
Sure.
But,
Well, I just wanted to touch on something you said there, because I think it's incredibly important to maintain some perspective, right? So when you see this, this mogul, this entrepreneur, this insanely successful guy, and he stands up there and he tells everyone, he's like, don't like your job? Quit it and pursue your dream. And it's like, yes, but there's a lot of steps in there, and so it's like that little nugget, that maybe I take a picture of a dude, standing in front of his jet, and I put that quote on the caption on the bottom and make a really cool meme out of, and it's like, there may be some truth there, but it's like that's not particularly helpful to anyone. You know what I mean? It's like, yes, if you don't like your job, then it would be great to just say, hand in your 2 weeks notice and then go start the job of your dreams. But it doesn't work that way. You know what I mean? That there's a lot of steps from that point A to point B. And so, these guys that just toss out some of these generic nuggets while they make really cool, motivational posters, it's really hard to get anything useful out of that. And so it's like, okay, yeah, you're working a shit job because that's what you have to do to get by, and we've all been there, we've all done that. Now what you need to start doing is find ways to, make money doing other things, or maybe not even find ways to do other things that make you happy. Step one. Step two is then, okay, now that I've found something that makes me happy, now I want to get really good at that thing. And this is going to come at a cost, right? You're going to have to dedicate time and energy, and you won't be able to sacrifice, obviously, your work hours and what you're doing to make a living. But, I feel confident that we could all carve out, 5, 10, 20, maybe 30 minutes a day to dedicate to some craft or some thing, right? And so now I dedicate that amount of time for X amount of months or years to become really proficient at it. Now I can start to think about making some supplementary income off of that thing. That's the idea of the side hustle, right? Where it's like, okay, now I've got this thing on the side that I really enjoy. Yeah, I'm doing this other thing to pay the bills, but this is where my heart and my passion is. And now I can work to grow that. And if you're good at it and you're creative and a little bit of luck, now you can shift the scales in that balance where you can let go of the shit job and actually grab a hold of the thing that you want to do. You know what I mean? But it kind of has to be within reach. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm not just gonna plummet in the dark. I'm not climbing this ladder and then just launch out into the pitch black and hope I can grab a hold of something on my way down. Like, I wouldn't advise that. And there's probably dudes that have made that work for them, and hats off to them. But I don't recommend that. It's like, hey, I at least want to be able to shine a flashlight on the next thing I'm going to reach out and grab to. If that analogy makes any kind of sense.
I mean, that's where the concept of Next Level Guy came from, was you were just, pick up the guitar, I want to learn the chords. Well, that's the next level. Oh, I want to learn to play a song, next level. And you could go on to the level of, I want to play in a band, I want to go off and become a multi-millionaire, superstar, rock star. That's fine, but some people only want to go to a certain level. But every book I read was, find your passion, give up your job. And I was thinking, that's insane, because you never hear about the guys who go into debt, lose their partners. It's always amazing how all these books, every single person who does it has their life transformed, and you're thinking, that's not going to work. If
it was that easy, everyone would be, these multi-millionaire, entrepreneur, super successful guys, right? There'd be a dime a dozen. If it were in fact that easy. And so I love that idea of this next level progression, right? Where, you evaluate where you are, and you set a goal, and then you figure out, each step of the way. And I like the idea of having somewhat of a realistic expectation of where you're going. And that goalpost may move. I mean, for me with fighting, I started fighting simply as a way to fill the void once my collegiate wrestling career was over. It was like, hey, man, I've been doing this for a long time. It's something I enjoy. I'm done wrestling. I'm done wrestling in college. I'm not good enough to go on and compete at the Olympic level. So what do I do? And my buddy's like, hey, man, this is, former teammate, another wrestler, was like, hey, I've been doing this MMA thing, and it's been pretty cool. I've really enjoyed it. I think you'd like it too. And then instantly, day one, fell in love with it. It's like, man, this is awesome. And was just doing it for the sheer enjoyment. I didn't walk in saying, I'm going to become a professional fighter. It was, hey, this is cool. I really like it. And so I trained and, got better. And I was like, man, this is cool. I need to do this more often. And then I went, and found out some of the guys were fighting, watched some of their fights, and like, man, that'd be really cool someday to actually take an amateur fight and see how well I would do, And so as I got better and more confident and more competent in that became a more realistic goal. That became something within reach. And I told my coach, I was like, hey, I'd like to actually compete and give this a shot. Okay, here's what you need to do. So, 6 months later, I got my first fight, went incredibly well. And I was like, man, that was great. Let's do more of that, And then after a handful of amateur fights, now the prospect of turning pro became, much more within reach and reasonable, and then so on and so forth. And now here I am, right? And now I'm doing something completely different that has virtually nothing to do with fighting. And that day, but fighting is what led me to this point, right? But the day that I decided, hey, I'm gonna go see what this, MMA thing is about. The day, that day where I stepped into the gym 10 years ago, I had no idea what that was going to turn into. It was, hey, this seems interesting. I'm going to try it. I'm going to dedicate myself to it to do the best I can at it, and we'll see where it goes. And I think that's a much more realistic approach to things. And over the course of that, I also realized some things that I didn't want to do. When I started my training, it was very apparent to me that that becoming a Muay Thai kickboxer wasn't going to be for me. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I trying to pursue that is going to be an exercise in futility. That doesn't play to my strengths. So while I will train it, that's not going to be my objective. Because I could have gone that route. I could have started training Muay Thai, and it's like, you know what? I'm going to be a Muay Thai world champion. But at 5'7", at 165, 170 pounds, I don't really quite have the build to execute that. So I decided to go a different route that I was more, gifted and talented and more capable and more likely to succeed in. So I think that's another part of it as well, is like, hey, dude, man, if maybe I really like basketball, but the prospect of me playing in the NBA, again, with my physical attributes, is pretty much a non-start,
Okay, now seems like a perfect time for a quick interruption. My apologies. I hope you're enjoying this interview as much as I did while I was doing it. I just wanted to give you a quick note on my affiliate schemes I've currently got going. I've set up some awesome deals with some amazing companies. If you go to www.nextlevelguy.com/affiliates, that's www.nextlevelguy.com/affiliates, or click on the affiliates deal in the blue ribbon at the top of the website homepage, you can go straight to my affiliate wonderland. There are so many special offers, listener exclusive deals, and discount codes available here. There really is something for everyone. It doesn't matter if you're buying for yourself, a special occasion, a team, a Secret Santa, an event coming up. There's something here for everybody. There's interesting products there that you might not have seen before. There's companies like Onnit, Amazon, McAndy's, Barbell Apparel. There's companies that will help you with outdoor equipment, with gadgets, with sporting equipment. Get your dating life better, get your sex life better. There really is something there for everybody. If you need it, it's there, and stuff you didn't even know you needed, but you'll definitely want, is there as well. Simply go to www.nextlevelguy.com/affiliates and enjoy. Please note, I don't receive any information on you or what you purchase. I don't receive any information on what you spend or what you purchase. All I receive is a small commission from the business as a thank you for sending you to shop with them using my links. The price you pay is not affected by the commission I receive. I get that separately from the company, so you get the best deals with special offers, discount codes, and listener exclusives. And now we've done that waffle, let's get back to the interview. Hope you enjoy.
Well, that could be, because this is why I liked your podcast, because yours is like mine, where you pick various components of a person. It's not so much just on building a business or, going to the gym, and we focus on the whole aspect of what makes us human. And it's difficult to see where you want to be. Is like, you have to be honest with yourself and not let the ego dictate that, I'm going to be brilliant at everything, and go, what could I honestly do? What do I want to do is just a bit of fun, but what do I want to do, take it serious? What could I make, ignite the fire? What could I do to make money off, and things like that?
Yeah.
So, how do we know we're being successful? Because being a good guy or a great man, or whatever term you want to use, is very ambiguous. People
Sure.
kind of go, well, is that a good guy as in, he's alright for a chat, or is that a great guy that I can be friendly with? How do you know that you're starting to bring together savage and gentleman into the kind of... It's because it's one of those things, is I can say, a guy listening, pick up the guitar like he's on the next level by getting better and better. But how do you bring it together in your kind of concept? Because when I seen your podcast originally, I thought, not another podcast. And then I was listening to it, and it's like, they're onto something. They're really picking, they're making people understand how it is and how they bring it together and create a better person. But how, it's not many people could ever answer this. It's like, how do we bring, how do you know people are improving? Is it an internal feeling? Is it other people notice it? Is it a combination of the two? Do you feel inside that you're answering that calling, or it's a difficult one to kind of even to ask the question. Never
well,
mind
sure, yeah. I mean, you're asking an age-old question that, you know, even some of the greatest thinkers of all time couldn't really define, or, you know, and that is, what is good. You know, I mean, Plato and Aristotle and Socrates and all these you know, minds, you know, the definition, you know, this existential idea of, you know, the definition of good obviously is a pretty ambiguous term. Mm-hmm. I think for us, what we have to do to figure out if we're on the right track or not is not necessarily trying to adhere to some external guideline of what a good man is or should be. Because I think if we're really honest with ourselves and we're being introspective, and maybe this is giving people far more credit than they deserve. I don't know. I tend to be maybe a little bit optimistic of what we're capable of. But I think, you know, if we can really truly look at our lives and what we're doing, and tell it and really truly say that, hey, these are the things that are making me happy, then I think that we're on the right track. You know, and obviously there's going to be outliers. You know, if you're looking at like sociopaths and you know, those kind of people, that doesn't really count. This doesn't account for everyone. You know what I mean? It's like, because what makes those people happy is not inherently good, right? But for most of us that have a pretty decent head on our shoulders, I can tell that I'm making progress by, you know, just how I'm living my life and the joy that I, you know, receive from that. And if I'm doing things that aren't making me happy, well, then I need to ask either A, why are they making me unhappy, or B, why am I doing them? And it kind of all comes back to a very, very critical and almost harsh examination of ourselves. And a lot of us don't really want to do that. We either don't want to take the time, or we don't want to recognize the truths. You know what I mean? Because again, it's going to highlight our flaws and our failures and our, you know, our iniquities and all these things that we really don't want to bring to light if we can help it. But you know, this idea, you know, I think in simpler, more useful terms, you know, I think we should be looking like, okay, am I doing things that are making me better on the savage side? Again, however you define that, and whether that's getting your hands dirty, whether that's, you know, going out, whether that's lifting weights, whether it's something physical, whether it's punching people in the face, you know what I mean, or making something, woodworking, building, creating on that side of this, you know, spectrum. Am I doing something there? And then am I also doing something on the gentleman's side? You know, am I taking care of myself? In my appearance? Am I treating other people the way they should be? Am I being a productive member of society? Am I adding value to those around me? You know, am I learning? You know, and kind of cultivating my intelligence. That's very much on the gentleman's side. And if you can say yes to both of those things, you're probably on the right track. And then the third point of that triangle is, am I happy? Are those things making me happy? And if all of that is generally true, then I would say, yes, you're pointed in the right direction. And let's be honest, none of us are going to have it perfectly balanced, perfectly figured out, and just, you know, every day is this, you know, blossoming ray of sunshine, of rainbows and candy and happiness, right? Like, that's not the world we live in. But if we're looking at, you know, we know the difference between when we're happy and when we're depressed or when we're down. Like, I would like to think that that's a pretty common human experience. We've all been there to some degree or other, and we can pretty clearly define what state we're in. But if the majority of the time you're happy with where your life is, then it'd say, yeah, you're in the right track. If you're not there, you need to find the things that maybe you're not there the majority of the time, you only experience that in small increments. Well, then you need to start taking notice, like, when are those times that I'm feeling the way I want to feel? And then how do I replicate that? how can I do that more frequently? And that's really the best that we can hope. I mean, like I said, it's foolish to think that we will be 100% happy all the time, right? But if I can get the balance to where it's like, man, 90% of the time, I'm in a pretty good mood, and I'm happy about my decisions and my life as it stands and where I'm going and, what's on the horizon. That's another thing, too, is like, if you look to the future, does it make you excited or does it fill you with dread? If you look to the future and you're filled with dread, you're on the wrong path. If you look to the future and you're excited, you're probably doing things right. It's probably, I guess that's the best way I could summarize it.
That was an amazing answer. It really sums up sort of how I feel like bits of it as well. It's like, I will say to people, it's like, it's not a life or death situation. You can start something, you don't like it, you move away, but if it makes you happy, do it. If you want to paint. But if you think, oh, somebody might buy it, maybe it will just be enough to get you a cup of tea or something like that, or your mom buys your painting or something like that. But it's what you give out and how you make people feel and stuff like that. And I think that's the beauty of this kind of thing, is that we have these podcasts now where people can actually listen who would maybe not have somebody to speak to, like an outlet to find out why they're there, and would maybe hit the drink and the drugs and, or would just go to their deathbed with a lot of regrets. And now we've got the chance that people can, as they're on the bus or work out, can sit and listen to this kind of stuff. So how do you make sure then that we pass this on to the next generation? You've got 2 kids. How are you making sure that they're opening up their savage gentleman? Or woman?
Sure. Well, and that's the thing, yes, it's called Savage Gentleman, but only in so much as, like, that's what I know, but it's not necessarily relegated to just, men and masculinity. I think that there's an aspect for women as well of just this idea of well-roundedness, you know what I mean? And being capable in a lot of other realms. I think that that's kind of a universal human, endeavor that we can all relate to in some degree. And so I don't think that that's really difficult to apply to my daughter just as much as I can to my son. And for me, the way that I try to do that is just by leading by example, showing them that there's and I think that's really what drives me, is like, there's so much to life. There's so many things in this world to explore and do and experience, that it's a shame when we sell ourselves short, right? For whatever reason, whether it be fear or just lack of confidence or whatever it is, where we don't go out and experience things. And so that's what I want them to have the ability, is the belief in themselves that they can do stuff, and the courage to actually go out and do that. And so that's, the way we pass that on, is one, by doing, and then, taking the opportunity when it arises to kind of explain the importance of whatever it is. I think, I'm trying to think, I've mentioned this to someone before we were talking, where it's like, look, man, I can't live my life just teaching a seminar to my kids. You know what I mean? Because I have to live my life. I have to do that. I can't just be this, mentor where everything that comes out of my mouth is this perfect nugget of wisdom, and I'm just constantly teaching them 24/7. But if I can live my life in a way that upholds these rules, then that, in this ideology, then that will manifest in my actions, and hopefully they're going to pick that up. And then I supplement that with a few key teaching moments if I'm paying attention and I'm able to capture that. Because again, I'm not perfect. You know what I mean? I'm sure there's plenty of missed opportunities of pieces of wisdom that I could have imparted on my daughter. My little guy, he's still too young for that to make a difference. But I'm sure I've messed up along the way, and missed an opportunity or didn't quite explain things in a way that I should, or maybe lost my temper when I should have kept my cool. All these things. but I try to be as cognizant of that as I can, because ultimately they're going to, however I end up raising them is going to reflect the way they raise their kids, so on and so forth, for the perpetuity of humankind. So I mean, I try to do that with my children, and then I kind of try to do that with everyone. You know what I mean? With everyone I encounter, I try to live my life in a way that is exemplifying, what I have learned that is good. I mean, I'm still learning and still figuring things out, but the beneficial things that have come to work for me, I try to impart that just kind of vicariously or through osmosis to anyone that I happen to meet. And I hope that if I'm being authentic and living my life that way, that will somehow translate to them, and then they can pick up on that and pass that along. And again, I'm not saying that I've got all the answers that I want to spawn an army of Josh Tyler clones, but I think that there are some aspects to what we're trying to do with Savage Gentlemen that anyone could find beneficial, if they were able to apply that to their lives in some way. And that's what I want to hopefully instill, not only with my kids, but pretty much anyone that I have the chance to meet or hear me speak.
No, that's great, because there was a British advert, I'm trying to think what it's for, but it was how that kids don't learn by what you say to them, they learn by what you do. So they look to you for sort of guidance, and they sort of mirror what you do, and they need you to be sort of accepting of them and what they want to do, but also to live your life in a way that's genuinely true to yourself. They don't want you to kind of hold grudges because you think, oh, I've gave up such and such, but the fact that you're open to change, so they're going to see what you can do, and by you trying to improve yourself, you're going to show them different levels that are available, which maybe they would never have got that in another scenario if you hadn't gone down this road. And that's what I find is amazing,
Yeah, and that's the thing, I've been fortunate enough again to be in a place where they're seeing me constantly striving to improve. I mean, life choices and circumstances could be different where they see me working a job I hate, being miserable all the time, and man, that's a real fear for me. Like, I don't ever want to be in that position, and I think that's what drives me to continue to try and reach that next level in everything that I do, because I don't want to settle, because I don't want my kids to see me settling. You know what I mean? I want them, when they think of me, it's like, no, Dad was constantly, working to improve and put his heart and soul into everything that he did, because that's what I saw of my parents. I mean, I watched my parents, and that was something I picked up from them, which, looking at my grandparents, that's something that I saw them do, which I'm sure they, that's something that has been passed down. And so a lot of the stuff, it doesn't really matter. We kind of get caught up in, this manliness thing and what it means to be the ideal man, and it's got to be, you got to look this way or act this way or do this or drink that or don't eat this and all these things. And it's like, man, it doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, it's like, man, if you cook your steak past this amount of temperature, you're not a real man. And it's like, look, dude, if you're going to cook a steak well done, I'm going to tell you you're wrong, but that actually has no bearing on your masculinity, if we really want to get down to it. You know what I mean? Again, it's funny to make a meme and joke about that, but it's like, all that stuff is so superfluous to what it means to be a good person, what it means to be a good man. And it's like, yeah, dude, I'm not going to eat your charred steak, hunk of meat, basically, that you turned into beef jerky, and I'll never cook mine in that way. But it's like, you know what, dude, if that is the way you prefer it, then you can cremate that thing and choke it down all you want to. I don't care. And I don't care if you like this beer or that beer or this whiskey or that whiskey. None of that really makes you more or less of a man. It's about, again, finding the things that matter and striving to get better at that. and I think I really ran off on a random tangent here that didn't pertain to your original statement, so I'm sorry for that. I don't know where stakes came into that.
I mean, that's the kind of stuff I love. It's when somebody flows and you can feel them getting their message out. Because to me, it's like, I don't want to go to my deathbed thinking I could have, I should have. I've had enough regrets over time, and as long as I'm happy and I'm creating and I'm giving back and I'm making others feel better, but I'm also making myself feel better and pushing myself to see where I can go. And I think that's probably what being a good guy is like, leaving the world and other people in a better situation than that you've come into, or helping people, or it's just
well, and we can't do that if we're stuck in the same place. You know what I mean? I think that, if that's the ultimate goal, is we want to leave the world in a better place, the only way we can do that is to continually strive to make ourselves better in some meaningful and impactful way. And the further we can do that, then the farther reaching our existence will extend. You know what I mean? Or our impact will extend. I think, if we really boil it all down, I think, that's the overall goal of what we're trying to accomplish with Savage Gentleman. I think that's the same ideology that you're doing with Next Level Guy. And we're all we're on the same page where we're trying to make the world a better place. I think, that seems maybe a bit grandiose in some way to even make that assertion, but you got to recognize that the better you become as a person, the more of an impact you can have on the people around you. And I think that that's a very powerful thing. And that should give you a lot of motivation for trying to get better, because now, I think that's where guys get stuck. It's like, well, they only get as good as they feel like they need to be for themselves, and then they kind of stop. They're like, oh, well, I guess I'm good enough at these things, and they stop trying. But if you look at it from like, hey man, you were put on this earth to do something, and if you just stop at the bare minimum, or just become complacent with where you are, there's something inside you that is gonna gnaw at you. And I think that's where, again, the wheels start to come off for a lot of guys, and we see them spiraling and going into these really dark places. And I think a lot of it comes from this complacency where they just decide, okay, this is where I'm at and how I'm going to live the rest of my life. And then there's something inside that just it's not congruent with, and there's this disconnect or this dissonance, and it just is gnawing at them. And if you don't take action, if you don't listen to that voice and try and improve in some way and find new challenges and do new things, man, it's only going to get worse. And again, that's I have nothing to back that up other than personal experience and conversation, anecdotal stories that I've gotten from other people, from other men who have lived their lives and come to the same conclusion. But I really think that there's some truth to that.
Because I would never wish like something similar like that to my worst enemies. The nights you come home and you feel like deep down unhappy. That moment. Because like we all have falling outs and tell each other to piss off and all that kind of stuff. But those months I've regretted, and I've sat there going to the same pub and sitting having the same conversations, thinking I don't want to be here. There must be more, and you almost create a fake front. And then you have people who kind of go, oh no, don't be silly. You can never survive in the big city. You can never survive getting a better job. And just thinking that there might be somebody listening to this just now who sits and goes, you know what, I'm going to try the guitar. I'm going to try a new job. It's an amazing feeling to think that. And then once they see that, okay, that worked for me. That made me okay, well, let's try this. I want to try painting. Oh, maybe somebody interested in buying this, or sell it on displate.com and all these kind of places. And
yeah,
it's amazing what it can do, and you just need to take that one step out. And that's why I love like the whole concept of what you guys are doing at Savage Gentleman. It's that moment of you can do it. It's okay to like want to like do all the gentlemanly stuff, like the business or the creative side. But there's also that side of you that you need to tackle to make you happy. And then by being happy, you then help other people by becoming happy. And it's a phenomenal thing you're doing. I mean, is there a dream guest that you want to have on the show?
Oh, man. There's so many cool guys out there. I mean, I would suspect that, because this is the way it's always happened, the dream guest is probably someone that I've never heard of or thought of, that is just going to come out of nowhere with this amazing story or nugget of information. I mean, there's a ton of people that I would love to sit down and chat with, just because I think they're really cool or really inspiring or whatever. But I don't know, man. Life is always, it's so funny, the way it surprises you. I bet the most impactful person would end up being someone that I would least expect it. You know what I mean?
I've had some amazing ones, like they'd say something, you're like, oh my God, and it completely changes your whole outlook on something. And it's, have you had somebody on who's said something that you've literally had a kind of wow moment, where it's changed your entire, not ideology, but your outlook
kind
on
of a
something.
paradigm shift, so to speak. Man, just about, we've been really fortunate where just about everyone we've had on the show has had, just, even if it's a slightly different perspective on the same thing, but literally every one of them has had, just this really cool piece that, that I've tried to take with me and embody. And one of the ones that really comes to mind, because it was so unexpected, I think that's what was really shocking. You know what I mean? So this is to take away from the value of what a lot of these other guys have brought. But this one just popped up out of nowhere, and it was a connection that I never would have thought to make. And it is a guy by the name of Wes Taylor, and he trains wild Mustangs to be war horses. So, here in the United States, we have horses that just run wild out here in the West, just like they did several hundred years ago, just like they did when they were first brought over from Spain, right? So these are wild animals. So he takes them and trains them into not only a horse that you can ride, but a horse that can actually think for itself and forms this like very cooperative connection with the rider, with its person. And like hearing him talk about his story, how kind of like what we were saying, where he made a complete change. Like he was I think he was in like the HVAC business. I think he was a salesman for heating and air conditioning and ventilation and that sort of thing. And when, in 2008, when the economy kind of hit the tubes there for us here in America, he found himself without a job and didn't know what to do. And then just all of a sudden like was inspired to pursue horses and training horses. And so now he spent the next years learning about it, trial and error, and now he's taking, again, these wild horses and training them to do things that you couldn't get a regular horse to do in like 20 years of training. I mean, it was amazing. And so I actually got to go down and experience this. So after we had him on the show, I was like, dude, this is amazing. I have to see this firsthand. Like, at some point, I'd love to come down and actually get to ride. And so I did. And it was unbelievable what these horses can reflect and teach you about themselves, because they're not broken. Normally when you train a horse, you break it, you make it submissive by just essentially forcing it to give up. I don't know if you're familiar with how that kind of works at all.
Well, they sort of break them in by breaking their will, sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. So now you have a horse that is obedient, but it is totally reliant and dependent on the human for input for what to do, which again is going to be limited. And you can train those horses to do amazing things, but it takes a lot of time. what he does is with his training is pretty. It's kind of groundbreaking. There's not a lot of folks that use this, and what was amazing for me was how I think it is very similar to the idea of the Savage Gentleman, where he's creating horses that are capable because they believe in themselves. They're not broken, right? They're not submissive. He's teaching them the confidence to trust in the person and trust in themselves, because a horse's natural state is to run. Something's out of place, I run. I don't know what it is, I run. I'm not sure, I run. And that's how they survive. So it's this, the fight or fight mentality. They freak out, and that's in the wild, that's what keeps them alive. Being able to teach that horse that, like, hey, that leaf rustling over there isn't going to kill you. You don't have to be spooked by it. You know what I mean? Now produces a horse that, if you're familiar with what war horses could do, I mean, these are horses that were taken into battle, and guys would ride them and fight other people. And, you may have seen images of horses laying down in the field in I think, World War II, and they're shooting a rifle from behind it. They're using the horse as a platform to fire from. And if you know anything about horses, they don't like to do that stuff. But again, these horses are so confident, you can get them to do just about anything. And I was like, man, if only we could teach other men to do that same thing, to be confident in themselves, to know and believe that they can accomplish and do anything, to not have that feel of failure, that if I don't succeed in this thing, I'm going to die and the game is over, because that prevents us from trying. And so that was one that really stuck with me, that episode. It was, I think we titled it Taming Wild Mustangs. And it was, again, Wes Taylor. We actually did a follow-up podcast with him. When we were down there on his ranch, we went, for anyone who wants to check that out and listen, we talked about the experience in front of the campfire, at the end of the trip. Man, it was just really cool to see how these, animals could be such a cool reflection of ourselves, and such a powerful analogy of what we could potentially be capable of. And that was something that I wanted to mention, what you were talking about a little while ago, of guys not trying these things, because they've kind of just given up. They've gotten to that place where it's like, all hope is lost. I'm stuck in this job. Nothing's ever going to get better. I'm not worth this. No one's going to believe me, and that sort of thing. And man, I don't think that there's anything as tragic as a man or a person who has given up on himself. Has just thrown in the towel and basically just resigned himself to his current station. I think that's the most tragic thing that could ever happen to us as humans, is just to completely give up on ourselves and give up all hope. And so,
you could almost say that that story is very much like what you're doing with Savage Gentleman, is that the guy listening is the horse. Mm-hmm. And, they've been broken and dominated by a society that tells them how to do things, and they're scared of something, so they run away from it. Yep. They have that feeling. Whereas you're the guy you're the trainer. You're showing them that they can be that partnership. You're explaining how to then take it. And then you're giving them the confidence to do things that they could never do by coming into the field of battle with you and going for something they want. So it's quite interesting that you picked that episode to really relate to, because in a way I feel like it kind of, I can't remember the name of it, it's like not a euphemism, but it's like it's symbolic of what you're actually doing. And I was sitting thinking, wow, that's amazing, because the way that you were describing it, I was thinking, that's exactly what you're doing for this generation of guys.
Well, and here's the thing, it doesn't have to be me. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have to be that guy. There's plenty of other, people in the world that are and can very capably do that thing where they're instilling, that confidence. And so whether it's coming from me or Ian Dawson or Ryan Mickler with Order of Man, or Jack Donovan, or any of these guys that are doing this thing, or even someone that isn't necessarily renowned in that space, but is just like a mentor. You know what I mean? We as men can do this for each other, and we don't have to have a podcast or a book or a TV show or anything like that. Do you know what I mean? Like, we have that capability if we just take the time to do that for each other. You know, that's really the message that I want to instill with Savage Gentlemen is like, look, man, you don't have to get it from us. You don't have to get it from me, because I will flat out tell you, I do not have the answers for everyone. I don't even know that I have the answers for myself. But what I do know is I've been fortunate enough to surround myself with other men who inspire and encourage and motivate me and teach me. That's the other thing too, is like, you know, motivation and all that stuff is really cool. I've had guys that actually have sat down and talked to me and shown me things and given me knowledge and wisdom and skills. Find that, you know what I mean? Because we can't do it on our own. No one is an island. No one can operate completely autonomously, you know, without any input from anyone else. We are tribal. We need that external input from other people. So that's where we want to seek that out and find that. And again, whether that's listening to the Next Level Guy podcast or whatever that is, man, we need to have that. I don't know, that drive, right? If we're in a bad spot, it's hard, but we've got to get over that hump and find something to get us on the right path again if we can. And sometimes that is seeking professional help. You know what I mean? Like, it might require more than just a podcast. You might actually have to go to a doctor and, you know what I mean, or a psychiatrist or someone, whatever. But it's like, man, don't resign yourself to just being stuck where you are. There's always a way out, and there's always room for improvement and ways to get better.
Because this is the first time in a while I've actually been genuinely unhappy when I looked at a clock, because I was thinking it's only about 30 minutes in. Yeah, and we've not even touched like toxic masculinity, hard and soft skills, but going out into nature and all this. Yeah, so you're one of these guys I could just sit and listen to for hours, and I'm very aware of like that your son's napping and stuff, but I really need to have you back on. I think we're just getting into that kind of area of, you're like me, you're seeking more out of life. You know, we're not one of these gurus. We're kind of like Ryan. We're kind of going, I don't know. Let's find out. Let's ask somebody who does know about it.
Yeah.
And then we'll improve ourselves there, and then we'll take our evolved self into the next area, and then we'll learn something else. But you have to go through these steps. So I'll have a couple of questions, and
Sure.
then we'll have to wrap it up, because I know I'm taking up a lot of your time, but I really need to have you back on. This has been one of the funnest podcasts I've had in a long time. But
well, I appreciate that, man, and I really appreciate you reaching out and taking the time to have me. And yeah, I mean, you know, sometimes it's easy to get caught up in talking into kind of these grand, you know, overarching themes. And then, you know, people are often left with, well, yeah, man, but I really wanted to hear about, like, how do you know, what's the best way to approach, you know, a street fight, or, you know, if I'm out in the wilderness and I need to survive, you know what I mean? Like, a lot of times people want much more specific or discrete skills, in which I'm happy to talk about, but sometimes I'm really bad about actually getting to the thing. And I kind of make these broad strokes and these more sweeping things. And people are like, well, yeah, man, but I wanted to know how to throw a punch, or what's your favorite submission? I'm like, oh, whoops, sorry. So yeah, absolutely, man. We can get in some more specific stuff.
Because there's all these kind of things in there. It's like how to be more emotionally open with your partners.
Sure.
But then it's like you're saying is, what's the best way of getting into MMA? Like, what's the best move set I could start with? And I know what you mean. It's like, I always want to deal with the first one to make it as a general kind of round the topics, and then the next ones are always a bit more kind of like into deeper stuff. But it's so fascinating, some of this stuff, and how we link it and how we look at things. And it's great to speak to somebody else who has their own podcast and is looking at the same kind of philosophy in life, as I am. So, who would you say? Is there anybody on media, like in the entertainment world, films, etc., that actually is a savage gentleman? I know it's difficult because you only see parts of the stories and stuff like that, but is there any kind of, like, because I used to write about Batman, like Wolverine, I used to show why they were good in a certain scene or a certain film.
Sure.
Is there anybody that you would kind of look at that you think, that's what we're looking to get people to? I know there's obviously going to be good and bad, but on each person.
Yeah, it is kind of hard because you're only seeing one side of people most of the time when you're talking about celebrities and that sort of thing, people in film and television. The guy right now that I would say probably has it, it would be like the goal or the perfect embodiment of a savage gentleman would probably be Jason Momoa, if I'm being honest. That's who comes to mind immediately, and I can say that with confidence because I know some folks who know him personally, so I have some insight to his character, more so than I would with pretty much anyone else. So I've been training with the folks that helped get Jason ready for Aquaman and Justice League and all of that. So they did a lot of his training, and he's got a really, really good relationship with those guys.
He's on my dream bucket list as well.
What's that?
He's on my bucket list of dream guests,
Yeah, I think it's going to happen one of these days. I missed actually hanging out with him in person, actually twice on two separate accounts by a window of about 30 minutes, maybe. Like I literally showed up to the gym and he had just left on two separate occasions, which is unfortunate. But I think if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. I mean, he's a guy that I would love to pick his brain. And what's cool about him is obviously he's this amazing actor, incredibly physically capable individual. I mean, but you look at him and you're like, that guy is savage, right? And yet you look at the things that he does and what he's into, and you've got this very intelligent and like emotional individual. You know what I mean? Like very well rounded. And again, we all have our flaws. Like nobody's perfect. You know what I mean? But I think from what I've seen of most of the actors, I think that guy is probably about as close as you could get, in my humble opinion.
Well, I actually love the guy, because somebody that throws axes, but then is so emotionally sort of secure in himself that he can happily invite his wife's ex-husband and give him like a ring that he had designed for the three of them, because they're kind of like sharing that. Like I can't remember exactly how he put it, but it was like, she was he was a big part of her life, and he wanted her to be remembering him as well. And there was all these kind of like amazing things, and then he's really like full on and does all the very masculine kind of stuff. But then he's very
rides motorcycles, and he drives around on this like amazing overland vehicle that he just traverses the globe in. You know what I mean? And so it's a very diverse but also balanced spectrum of things, which is super cool, man. And I don't think we see enough of that. The idea of this Renaissance man is kind of, here's the thing, the idea of a savage gentleman isn't anything new. I mean, this is, I think that the savage gentleman has been the epitome of what men have striven for since we've started documenting that. It's just a different spin. It's just a different, coining the term differently. But I think that we've all been trying to get there. That's where we've all wanted to be. There was a time where it was just out of necessity, where you had to be both, and the most successful men had that. Now we've gotten to a place in society where you don't have to have any savage skills whatsoever to make it by. You know what I mean? And so a lot of that is being lost, and we get so hyper focused on becoming specialists that we become completely inept in everything else, and I think that's I think that's a mistake for most cases.
Well,
So again, I think he's a guy that recognizes, hey man, I should be good at a ton of things, and I'm going to pursue the things that I enjoy and that bring me happiness across the board, whatever that is. I'm not going to say, oh, I have to, I'm a tough guy, so I can only do tough guy things, right? Or I'm an artist, I can only do artist things. He's someone that is actively and consistently doing both all the time.
And he's definitely somebody that I would love to sit for a pint with, and just rack his brains.
Oh, yeah. I don't know if you could just sit for a pint with that guy. Like, I think you might be in for quite a few. And that's what that's what's cool about him is you see him in some of these roles, and that character there's a lot of who he is being coming through in that, which I think is really cool. Is like, you look at like Declan Harp in Frontier, and it's like I could totally see that is the way that he goes out drinking, you know what I mean, for a night on the town. It's just in that same just hard charging kind of way, which I'm like you, man. I would love to. I'll pay for it the next day, but it would be totally worth it.
Well, you've got to sacrifice your liver sometimes to to become a savage gentleman.
Absolutely.
Well, so what would you want people to take from this? I actually feel really sad at having to wrap it up. I could go for another couple of hours easily. Sure. And you're definitely the kind of guy I would love to go for a pint with. Maybe I would have to get my MMA skills up before we get in the cage, but what do you want people to take from this? Apart from visiting your podcast, apart from bringing on the kind of concepts of savage gentleman and that, and checking out your site, because really it blew me away, the message, and the impact it's having. But what do you want them to take as a sort of go home message? If they have to remember one thing, what would it be?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's remembering the name and what it stands for. Because I think that can summarize it. I mean, if you remember savage and gentleman, and okay, how can I apply that to myself? I think that will ultimately get us where we want and where we need to be. Using that to look at, like, okay, between savage and gentleman, if I apply that to my life, which area am I deficient in, and where can I add to that? And then once I add that and I get to that level, now I go to the next level and I look, okay, now where can I add? And I just keep leveling up. And eventually, man, we'll all be in a much better place. So I think, without getting too specific, I think that would be what I want people to take away is find ways to try and balance that savage and gentleman, and then continue to build in both facets equally, as much as we can.
So until I have you back on, which I'm really hoping soon, how can people keep in touch? Because we've mentioned what savage gentleman is, but how can people find it and see what you're doing? Because you've got some amazing products there that help guys sort of improve. That's another area I wanted to look at.
Yeah. I mean, I can touch on that a little bit. So we do have a store online. It's savagegentleman.com. That's our website. And we make products that we sell with the intention of serving as that reminder. We're making things that when I look at this leather notebook wallet, it reminds me, it's kind of a symbol of what it means to be a savage gentleman, because it has the name on it, it has the logo, the brass knuckles and the straight razor, but it has this very vintage feel to it, right? It's handcrafted leather. And so it's balanced. Leather is a very primitive resource and medium, but at the same time, it's also very classy and very refined. And that's why we actually started with leather, because it was like, okay, what material item can we make something out of that really embodies both aspects? And leather is what we came to. And so everything that we make, I mean, yes, it's just a wallet, but I want it to be more than that. I want it to serve, as a symbol for what that actually means and what being a savage gentleman means to you. Not just, hey, here's something where I keep all my credit cards and stuff in, or I have a notebook that I jot ideas down. They can go to savagegentleman.com. All of our products, everything we design, like I really want it to embody that idea, and I wanted the products to be things that I use myself. That was the other criterion for doing that. So you can find things there. The blog is located there. You can reach the podcast there. The Savage Gentleman podcast, you can get that pretty much anywhere podcasts live. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook. On Instagram, we're at Savage Gentleman Official. We put a lot of stuff there as well. And if you're looking for me and more of my, because obviously there's the Savage Gentleman business, and then there's me, Josh Tyler. And I try to separate those a little bit, although there's a bit of a crossover. Because I don't want to make Savage Gentleman solely about me and who I am. I've got a business partner who is actually more on the gentleman side. And I want Savage Gentleman to be something broader than just one or two people, right? So I try to draw that distinction. But if you want to check me out and some of the things that I'm personally up to, it's at Josh Tyler MMA is my Instagram, and you can see me running around doing stuff in the woods or hanging out with my kids or trying to beat people up or whatever nonsense I happen to be into at the moment.
It's very delicately put. That was because of like how uniquely brilliant it was. I really wanted to cover the concept of it, but I mean, I was also going to get into your relationship with Matt, how you've evolved as a person since you've kind of worked together.
Yeah,
your overall how you've both become better people. There was so much else, and I was thinking, just stick to kind of the basics. see if he wants to come back on, because it's like there's so much. You could talk for days on this sort of stuff, can't you? It's amazing how it blows you away. Well, I've used up over like almost 40 odd minutes extra than I said it was, so I can only apologise. But is there anything coming up, anything that you want to promote, anything that you want people to check out? The floor is open to you.
Oh, man. Yeah, I mean, I would say we're constantly releasing new items in our store. We've got these declarations of independence that we just released for 4th of July. They're gold inlaid for you more patriotic folks on this side of the Atlantic. I guess I don't know where your listeners are. That might not really appeal to those folks as much. But so if you're not into Americana, we've also got a ton of other stuff. We actually have a coffee line that we just launched not too long ago. We've got 3 blends. We've got our lightest roast, which is Gentleman, our medium roast, which is Savage, and then we've got our darkest roast, which is Toxic Masculinity. So if you're in the market for a new coffee, these are small batch roasted and if really darn tasty, if I do say so myself. But I encourage you to check those out if you're in the market for that, and just peruse through and see what tickles your fancy. We're always coming up with new things, and most of the stuff is we'll do a run of it, and when it's gone, we'll put something else in. So just keep checking back for new things, because that's what's fun for me. Like I get bored doing the same thing over and over and over again. That's why if you look at my Instagram, it's just all kinds of random stuff, which technically is not the way you're supposed to Instagram. Generally, you pick your niche and then you just stay there. You know what I mean? And that's all you post about. I don't care that much. Maybe I'd have more followers if I did it the right way, but it's like, dude, I can't just post fight stuff all day, every day. It's boring to me. So same thing with our products. It's boring for me just to keep for us to make just the same thing over and over and over again. I want to experiment. I want to come up with new designs, new innovations. We've got a punching bag that is pretty badass. It's a vintage inspired heavy bag made out of leather, which looks really cool. Again, if you're in the market for that sort of thing, we've got, if you're more into the woodworking or more craftsmen and that sort of thing, we've got these really cool leather aprons. I mean, I could sit here and talk about our products all day, but I'm sure people are probably sick of hearing my voice at this point. So just go check out the store. If you like some stuff, buy it. If you don't, I mean, that's okay too. I'm not
could
going to
literally spend hundreds in there. There's some amazing, even like the Constitution ones. Even though I'm British and how that came about, they do look absolute badass. It's like the laptop bags were just looking at me. Every time I turn around, I was like, I could buy one of them. I could get one of the wallets as well. And I was like, oh God, here we go again. I just want to spend thousands. But I cannot thank you enough for coming on.
I just let me add this, and this will be the little nugget for all the people who stuck with us to the bitter end, and maybe this will help you out of that endeavor as well, in maybe not spending quite as much. What if we did a promo code for Next Level Guy for your listeners? Let's say we do, I don't know, like a 10% off their purchase order.
Yeah, that sounds amazing.
All right. So let's do this. I'll set it up after we get off. I'll set it up. I mean, this isn't going to come out straight away. So by the time that people hear this, the promo code will be set up and functioning, and they can use it. Let's just do Next Level. They can enter in Next Level at checkout. 10% off their order in SavageGentleman.com store.
That is amazing. Thank you so much for that. I'm sure people
pleasure.
will be buying a lot on that.
I hope so. We'll see.
Well, I really do appreciate this. This is why I love this show, because I get to connect with guys like yourself, and it makes me, even if it's just myself getting a chance to speak to people, hopefully it's more than that, but it blows me away, how warm and friendly everybody is, and how much I've changed as a person, and hopefully helped other people. So we got to get you back on. We've got to do this again.
Let's do it.
Really get into.
That's it for another week. Thanks for listening. Absorb it, practice it, use it. Until next time, keep trying to hit that next level in your life.